Hello all, James here. Now, yesterday I did a video on Andrade and the mystery of why he appeared and then disappeared from AEW television just as quickly. There were a ton of theories originally, not yesterday, but in the intervening couple of weeks, I guess, as to why Andrade was taken off television so quickly, from disciplinary reasons to maybe buyer's remorse on Tony Khan's part, to maybe Tony Khan just going a different direction, which he often does with his booking. But anyway, the prevailing wisdom at this point is that it's believed to be one giant contract dispute between WWE and AEW regarding no-compete clauses in WWE's wording in their contracts. Now, the mystery remains why Andrade was able to work a Mexican independent promotion on, I think, October 3rd, but not a US-based independent promotion at the end of the month against LA Park. But he's still apparently scheduled to work for the World Wrestling Council in Puerto Rico this weekend as of recording. Now, once again, WWE, when they release one of their independent contractors, and once again, that term will be coming up a couple of times in this video, the performer in question is not allowed to work for another promotion for 90 days, regardless if they're major or minor. Now, that's been the standard for a long time, and it is enforced, by the way, usually with independent promotions, once again, as well as major. What's strange here, though, with Andrade is that WWE apparently told AEW or Andrade or whatever that they just wanted Andrade, they fired him, they just wanted him gone. And he was apparently free to do whatever he wanted or earn his money wrestling for whoever he wished. Now, the WWE, did they just go back on their word? Or was it communication, or miscommunication, as it were? We don't know, but once again, the prevailing thought is at this time is that WWE may have retroactively rescinded Andrade's freedom to work wherever he wanted. Now, which is why Andrade hasn't been seen in AEW since his lone appearance on AEW Dynamite back on October 1st. No match with Kenny Omega, which seemed to be being set up for Wrestle Dream. No Wrestle Dream. No mentions on television. Nothing. But then something else was brought up yesterday after I finished recording the video on Andrade, that the newer WWE contracts, as well as current TKO contracts, now have a more draconian measure, at least on the surface, in place. That if WWE find just cause, quote, WWE can fire you and then keep you under a no-compete clause for 1 whole year. Now, what constitutes just cause? Well, kind of basically everything Andrade's been up to the last couple of years, or at least accused of. Multiple wellness policy violations, especially if you're doing them on purpose. Not turning up for work is another reason that would go under the umbrella of just cause. Starting trouble, getting into fights, that kind of thing, like Andrade also did in AEW. Something of that nature would, I guess, fall under just cause, and you, sir, will find yourself out of the job. Like, how he did with AEW and WWE over the last couple of years. Whether WWE actually pay you for the entire year after a just cause firing or not, I'm not sure, but I'm guessing no. At least not for the entire year. But, once again, if proof comes out to the contrary, I'm happy to be wrong. But it's not just Andrade who had been looking to jump from WWE to AEW, or wherever else this past few years. Mustafa Ali, Brody Lee, Mike Bennett, Sean Spears, they all publicly made pleas on social media to leave WWE publicly. And, sometimes it fell on deaf ears, sometimes it didn't. Although none resorted, obviously, to Andrade's methods, if indeed that was Andrade's motivation. Do all these things, wellness policy violations, not answer the phone when WWE call, not turn up for bookings, etc. If that indeed was, his plan all along to, rid himself of his WWE contract. But AEW's been the same. Ricky Starks, Rusev, Malachi Black, I think, might have at one point, but once again, I might be wrong on that. All wanted out of their contracts publicly with AEW. Mariah May too, although she was, far less subtle with it. Essentially, the reason for the clause, this 1 year just cause clause, as it were, is so performers exactly like Andrade and the rest can't stop acting up in a major way to then secure an early release, just to then hop to the competition. It's not so draconian when put that way, but like pretty much any clause in any contract, it's all down to the wording and how said wording can be abused. So, for example, what if a talent has, pluck a number out of the air, 4 months left on their WWE contract, and let's say they vehemently disagree with some creative direction handed down from the booking committee or writers team or whatever. Now, all finishes are final, and you're basically a performing monkey for the promotion. You sort of have to bend the knee to their will. But everyone has a limit of what they are or are not willing to do on screen. Like, for a famous example, Owen Hart. He was completely against the idea of being in a love triangle storyline with Deborah McMichael. Now, does that mean WWE had just cause to fire said wrestler, Owen Hart, in this example, and then punish them further legally by blocking them from earning a living for an entire year after the fact because they stood up for themselves? Now, once again, that's a hypothetical, but it's not out of the realms of possibility. Now, as for the clauses in WWE and TKO contracts, they've been put in place, this 1 year no-compete thing, just cause, a lot longer than people think. Now, this was backed up by Lance Storm last night on Wrestling Observer Live. Lance Storm in 2019 was hired by WWE to be a backstage producer/agent. Now, when he was released during the pandemic, WWE was still obligated to pay him the 90 days worth of no-compete because he was released from the company, but not for just cause. Now, importantly, the just cause clause was present in Lance Storm's contract as far back as 6 years ago. Once again, he signed or re-signed back in 2019. Now, when Lance Storm questioned this clause and asked for the opinion of WWE Talent Relations VP and legal paperwork expert Johnny Laurinaitis of the new clause, the master of the Ace Crusher claimed that it was now standard practice to put this clause in everybody's contract. Once again, 6 years ago, but it's only just getting out now. And if you want to know the exact wording, courtesy of Fightful, here we go. Upon termination of this agreement by promoter for breach of the terms hereof, wrestler shall not work, appear, or perform in any capacity for any professional wrestling, sports entertainment, mixed martial arts, and or ultimate fighting organisation, promotion, or entity not owned or controlled by promoter or any affiliated or subsidiary company thereof in the US for a period of up to 1 year from the date of such expiration or termination or specified by promoter in the notice of termination provided. However, that if no less a period is specified by promoter in the notice of termination, such period shall be 1 year. And then there's a follow-up. In no circumstances whatsoever shall either party to this agreement be liable to the other party for any punitive or exemplary damages, and all such damages, whether arising out of the breach of this agreement or otherwise, are expressly waived. Once again, in the Andrade case, it's particularly odd because it says wrestler shall not work, appear, or perform in any capacity for any professional wrestling, sports, entertainment, blah, 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 promotion. Whereas, I mean, he already has for AEW, and then he already did for that indie, the Crash in Mexico, and he's still but for one in Puerto Rico as well, but not AEW. This is why it all gets a little muddied and a little weird. Now, Andrade's potential 1 year, it's up to 1 year, as the legal wording there says. Is this unpaid hiatus unenforceable, or is it enforceable? Well, I don't think it really is enforceable, really. Once again, I cannot imagine any court in the land would hold up an independent contract from WWE or TKO for a wrestler being terminated, but then the promotion they used to be part of, and once again, independent contract, is determining legally or declaring legally that said wrestler then cannot be able to be allowed to ply their trade or make money for an entire year after their firing. Once again, they're not employees, they're independent contractors. Now, WWE's argument would be that the performer knew what they were getting into before they signed, but as unenforceable as the clause appears to be on paper, it still requires money and time and resources and resourcefulness as well to challenge said clause, get it removed, and then go make money elsewhere. Now, the perfect example of this is Brock Lesnar. He secured an early release from his WWE contract back in 2004. After the grind of the road and then injuries and whatnot wore him down to the point that he was just done, burnt out, and sick of it. And it wasn't just Brock Lesnar at the time. Bill Goldberg was gone the same time as Brock Lesnar after WrestleMania 20. Nathan Jones, a few months earlier, who WWE had really high hopes of. They were travelling through Australia, his native land, and when I guess they got close enough to his house, he just didn't get back on the plane and just said, I'm done, never doing it again. So, Brock Lesnar re-signed with the WWE on July 1st, 2003, and his contract length, and in fact, why don't we just show the contract instead, if you bear with me 1 second, here we go. It does say it there, I think the screen recorder is not going to make it very obvious there. But Brock Lesnar's contract length was 7 years, with a downside guarantee of $1 million per annum. Downside means Brock Lesnar would never make less than $1 million per year, and I think that includes, injury or having to take time off, or if the houses, fell down horribly and they weren't actually making that money, he would still make at least that every year. But once again, he'd probably make a lot more, with merchandise, royalties, extra payoffs, whatnot. But then Brock Lesnar jacked in wrestling for good. After that, once again, god-awful WrestleMania 20 match with Bill Goldberg. It was simply, they were all just done with the travel, etc. However, WWE attempted to hold Brock to the length of the contract, which would have seen him unable to make money in wrestling until the summer of 2010. Not only that, WWE considered a lot of other things in the competitive sports field competition, I guess, and also had that in the wording of the contract, like we saw in the contract we just saw with, not Andrade, but the Fightful example given, with UFC. So, no pro wrestling promotion, no UFC, no show jumping, no competitive tiddlywinks, whatever it might be. Well, not actually. American football was fine, but when Brock's brief preseason stint with the Minnesota Vikings fell through and he was cut, all that was left for Brock to make really serious money as an athlete was combat sports, real or simulated. But unfortunately, like it was in the modern example given by Fightful, UFC and mixed martial arts was also in the contract when Brock Lesnar re-signed. Now, once again, WWE tried to hold Lesnar to the terms of his contract, but in early 2005, Brock took WWE to court, calling the independent contract terms as, quote, unreasonable, oppressive, unfair, and inequitable. And unsurprisingly, a judge said it was indeed ridiculous to stop a man making money for that amount of time. Keep in mind, once again, 7-year contract. They being WWE and Vince McMahon, wanted to hold him to the terms, block him from wrestling or MMA for 7 years, which would have taken that till the summer of 2010, which just seems completely ridiculous. And once again, a judge agreed. How can you stop somebody, especially an independent contractor, not an employee of WWE, be blocked from making money from pro wrestling or even mixed martial arts for 7 years, or 6 years, or a little over 6 years, I think at that time, I'm right in saying. Now, Lesnar and WWE eventually settled, and Brock Lesnar went back to pro wrestling for New Japan this time in the October of 2005. And as a final FU to WWE and Vince McMahon, he renamed his F5 finisher The Verdict as an honor, I guess, or a tribute to his personal courtroom triumph. Now, yes, could WWE block Andrade from appearing on AEW television for an entire year? I guess it's possible, but could Andrade challenge the Just Cause 1 year no-compete clause and win? Yes, I think he actually could. Is it worth the time and money and effort to go through legal proceedings for Andrade specifically? Well, maybe if Tony Khan's footing the bill, but then I'd say yes. But once again, it took Brock Lesnar, I don't know if it took Brock Lesnar 8 months for the legal stuff to sort of settle out of court eventually, is what happened, before he ended up getting back to the ring. But let's say it's 8 months. That's 8 months, and then you're being blocked for a year. That's a lot of, once again, time and money and resources being put into challenging a clause where you're only really gaining back a few months at the end of it. And in Andrade's case, it might not be worth it. We will see. But at this point, it seems we won't be seeing Andrade back in AEW, in an AEW ring or on television until at least 2026 at this moment. So, once again, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you for the next video.